I'm about to straight up Mr. Rogers this, but it's like there's only one you in this wonderful world. And if you don't show up as yourself, and admittedly yourself in this specific stage, but like if you don't show up as yourself, no one else is doing it. Like you're robbing the world of something that's unique and special and important.
Welcome to Worthy Mother Podcast. I'm your host, Emily Hardy, a mom of two on a mission to help moms everywhere feel less alone. This is not a parenting podcast. Instead, it's a space for pushing back against societal expectations of perfection and embracing self-compassion in your motherhood journey. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome back to the Worthy Mother Podcast. This is an episode that has been in the works for a while. We've had to reschedule this a few times because on my end, I realized that my kid was on spring break one time, and then last week we were going to be recording, and my kid's school called about 20 minutes after drop-off that he had some signs of an ear infection. So we are finally having this conversation, and I just preface with all of that just to let you know just the realities of being a parent and having to deal with all of that stuff alongside the work that we do, you know. So today we have Abigail O'Bryan joining us. She is a mom of two and an author. She is doing big things with her writing right now, really exciting. And she's here to just share with us about the importance of following your passions, doing the things that you love to do, and really also how to make that happen when you have kids at home, because we know that the importance of doing that versus the actually making it happen, two different things. So Abigail, welcome to the Worthy Mother Podcast. Thank you for being here. Can you just give us the gist of who you are, what you do?
Hi, so happy to be here. If anyone's familiar with Enneagram, I'm a 9 wing 8. So you just asked like the most impossible question, like just real quick, tell me something about yourself. And I want to be like, here's the depths of my soul. So that's something about me. I don't care what your favorite color is, but I do want to know what's important to you. I love flowers, like gardens, music in all the ways, good food. Like my life mission is that when people come into my house that they get whatever measure of like home and family that they need. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. I like to think that one of my greatest life accomplishments is that I made it through the pandemic with a toddler and a newborn.
Oh, yeah.
I was not writing at that time, just to be clear. I am like in the thick of a book launch, which is wild to me. This is a dream that I was pursuing pre-kids, pre-marriage, and it's like, you know, spilled over, cascaded into all the different life stages. But I was not pursuing this when I had small children, and it just showed up one day. And it was important enough to me that I'm like, if it showed up, then it doesn't matter that I have small children at home that don't go to daycare. I'm fully a stay-at-home mom. I'm going to figure out how to do this. And it doesn't matter that I'm a 9 who wants to disappear. Like, I'm going to figure out how to like show up and really pursue this hard. So I have been doing a lot of growing. I think honestly, like because I care so much about this story that I've carried with me for so long, it's brought about so much growth for me, because if I didn't care so deeply about this one thing, there are so many things that like I would have never gone out of my comfort zone in those departments. And now I'm doing stuff and it like doesn't take a toll on me that like would have destroyed me a couple of years ago, just because it's like I care so deeply about this that it like forced me out.
I love it. You're such an Enneagram 9.
Just represented.
And such an artist. I love it. It's like that is a passion, right? Like that is the definition of having something that you care so deeply about, that you are pouring your soul into. And I want to just acknowledge seeing everything that's happening right now with your book and seeing you posting on Instagram with such excitement and joy and just like, this is actually happening. I can tell how grateful and excited you are. And it rubs off, right? It's like, yes, like this is what we all should be able to have in some sense, right? Maybe not exactly the same thing, maybe not writing a book and having it be published and launching it and all of that, but something that just brings that joy out of you in a way that's unlike anything else, right?
Yes.
So I want to like kind of get into that Why do you see it being so important for moms in particular to keep dreaming and to keep doing what they love, even after they have kids? And, there's all that comes along with that.
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to start off with like, why wouldn't it be?
Hmm.
Like, I feel like there's this sort of weird notion of like, you check into the hospital and like leave your personality behind or something. Like, that's weird. I also don't think that like kids are just sort of like a sideline thing where like you're still basically living your pre kid life. And then just occasionally there's like children there. Like there's nuance in it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why there are like all these parenting books and all that kind of stuff is that everyone does it differently because people are different and that is good. But specifically thinking about like how to put this into words, I think like our identities are informed by the roles and relationships that we have in our lives, but they're not defined by them.
Hmm.
So I think kind of regardless, like I'm about to straight up Mr. Rogers this, but it's like there's only one you in this wonderful world. And if you don't show up as yourself, and admittedly yourself in this specific stage, but like if you don't show up as yourself, no one else is doing it. Like you're robbing the world of something that's unique and special and important. So like we need to keep showing up in the things that make us us.
I love the way you put that. I love the Mr. Rogers of it all. This is important. It's important for us to continue to grow the different parts of ourselves and to follow the things that we want to do. Because, like you said, it doesn't just end when we have kids. Our contributions to the world continue to be something that's worth sharing, right?
Yeah.
And it's understanding how we can talk about it in a way that acknowledges the struggles that may come about trying to do that while also raising children. There's a lot of nuance to the conversation, and it's also a really important conversation to be having.
Yeah. And I guess this kind of loops around to like how my family functions as
Hmm.
well, but like how I'm pursuing things that are important to me is like kind of a combination of like boundaries, integration, and just asking for help. So like the boundaries, our kids' bedtime, I have a 4 and a 6-year-old. Our kids' bedtime is 6:45. We don't care if they go to sleep, but that is their bedtime because we have friends who come over to our house pretty regularly at like 7 or 7:15 to come and play board games and whatever, and we host so that we don't have to have a babysitter, or we set things up so that other people can bring their kids
Hmm.
and like put them down at our house, and we have like a space for that. And like that is a way that we have like set up our lives where we're like, nope, this is important to us. And so this is how we establish this. And as the kids get older, that's going to shift, but it's not going to change that we have this value of like the evenings are for us
Yeah.
to like connect as a married couple, to connect with our friends, to go do things. So like we're going to shift how we do that as the kids get older, but the value isn't going to change. The integration part is like I love cooking. I mean not like every day, but like in general I love making good food and that's fun for me. So I also try to involve my kids. Once again, not every day. This is like occasionally I do this where I'll bake with them or I love gardening. And so figuring out ways where it's like, I want my kids to also enjoy being out in the garden. They don't have to be doing the same thing as me, but that like changes what I plant. So every year we try to have a couple of tomato plants that do like the little really sweet
The really
cherry
good
tomatoes.
ones.
Yeah. The ones that you just like pick and eat immediately. And so my kids like being outside with me because they can graze. We're like, we're not going to give you a snack, but have you checked outside? So like those kind of things, like figuring out how the things that bring me life, like I can involve my kids, and that doesn't necessarily mean directly like instructing them and
Yeah,
doing the thing with them. It means finding something where they can like adjacently participate and enjoy the same area and then
totally.
just asking for help. It's really hard for me, and I'm gonna go ahead and guess that it's really hard for a lot of other people to ask for help when it's not necessary, when we don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, when we deem it that
So,
way.
yeah, because it's like, I doubt anyone feels guilty calling someone and being like, "Oh my gosh, like, so and so just broke their arm. Like, we have to take them to the emergency room. Can you watch my other child? Like, no one's going to be like, I shouldn't call people
Yeah, how
for that.
selfish.
Yeah.
How selfish of me.
But I think having the value of like doing these things that fill me up and are like uniquely important to me and my well-being, that's worth calling reinforcements in for. And maybe it's a little bit more scheduled, but like that's worth it. And it can be really hard. It can be really hard to have that like mental framework, and if it is, then talk to your support system about that. Like, tell them, hey, I feel really awkward asking for this because I feel like I would actually be a burden or that I would be like
Yeah.
harming our relationship if I'm asking you to like watch my children at this time because I just want to go off and write. Like, is that allowed? And like have that
Have
conversation.
the
If they're
conversation.
like, no, I'm really just like an absolute emergency person, then you're like, okay, we've had that conversation. But some people will be like, "No, I think that's great. You should absolutely do that. But could you water my plants occasionally?" And you're like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't just base it on assumptions of what people can and can't or will and won't do for us. And sometimes maybe there's something, again, that, like you just said, that they want from us. And it opens that line of communication. And it's not like you're always going to request help and get the help you need, but just making it a part of your life to know that it's okay to ask is huge. I think everything that you've said there with having the boundaries and having the boundaries that maybe are flexible, deciding how flexible you're going to be. I know you said your kids go to bed at 6:45. I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and we're very similar. We do a fairly early bedtime so that we have our evenings clear. But then also if there's something where we want to go and be with family, this weekend we're going to a birthday party that's going to be in the evening and a bunch of family is going to be there, and knowing that we're going to be flexible with that because we want to enjoy that. And so they'll come along, they'll have tons of fun, but it's not necessarily a decision made for them, it's made for us. And knowing that like the flexibility, they're cool with that. We are all able to be flexible. So I love that. And then also just incorporating the things that you love to do and letting them be part of that, the integration there. I think that's a really powerful thing to just kind of keep in mind, that we don't have to always be doing things for our kids for it to feel just as beneficial to them and for them to get so much out of it. And I would say probably there may be more benefits to what you said of like doing something that brings you joy and allowing them to be there for that particular event, that particular activity. It's like it works out that they come out in the garden with you and hang out. And I think overall what I'm seeing there is just this mindset of knowing that your kids don't always have to come first in the decisions you make. They're always considered in the decisions you make, right? You're not making harmful decisions for yourself that, harm them. But you're also not necessarily just making decisions of what's going to be best for my children. It's really what's going to be best for me and the family. That's a huge shift in the way a lot of moms, a lot of parents make decisions, because we feel so often like we have to be considering our children top of the list. And really, that's not always the way we get to the best decision for everyone. And so I want to pull that from all of that because I think it's such an important piece of the conversation when we're talking about being able to do things for yourself. Knowing that doing things for yourself, yes, sometimes you need the time and the space apart from your children, and that can be a really important piece of the puzzle. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that's always what's going to be happening. You can do things for yourself, and your children can be right there benefiting from it.
Yeah. There are 2 things that I think about in my own life, and that it's like you're setting up a pattern that your children are gonna look back on when they're adults. They're gonna be
Mhm.
like, "What did my mom do?"
Yeah.
And they're gonna remember, like, not perfectly, but they're gonna remember. Like, for me, my kids know that, like, every Monday night, I go to writing group. Daddy puts them down, I say bye right after dinner, and I leave. And every time they're like, "No, I wish you didn't go," and they're fine. But, like, when they're adults and they're
Mhm.
trying to figure out their own life and their own balance, they're gonna remember, like, "Oh, yeah, no, mama was, like, there for me. We did things together, we had meaningful times together, and also, she had a writing group that she, like, left and went to, and she was doing her own thing. She was still a person when she was a mom." And I think that's so valuable.
So valuable. It's valuable not just in their future family dynamic, which it is hugely valuable
Mhm.
there because it's something that they can know that their identity doesn't have to be just completely taken over by the roles that they have. But it also, when you think about the way our culture functions with just having a job and having all these things that like demand our energy and our time, to have that modeled for you that you can do things for yourself and you can make that a priority and something that is like literally in your schedule taking up time, that they know it's that time, like they know that you are going to that unless like something extreme happens. That's what's happening, is you're going to writing group. That's important to you. For them to see that and take that with them into any part of adulthood, to know that they
Mhm.
can protect their time, they can protect their energy for the things that they want to spend their time and energy on. Like, wow, it's
Isn't that
huge.
amazing? Well,
It's
this is
huge.
something that my husband and I are really passionate about, is that we want our children to look at adulthood and see it as a time of fulfillment and
Mhm.
joy and growth alongside all the responsibilities.
Yeah.
So, like, this was literally a conversation with my 4-year-old daughter recently. Basically, she was like, "Man, like, you have so many things that you have to do." And I was like, "Yes, but also I can get sushi anytime I want." And she was like, "Mm." Like, just things like that where it's like, I wanna show her that, like, yes, there's a lot of stuff we have to do as grown-ups, and also it's good.
Yeah. Well, I think about like how I mean, I don't know how everyone perceived being a grown up when they were a kid, but it feels like, oh, I'm going to finally have freedom. And, when you're like a teen who has rules and you're like, oh, when I become a grown up, I'm going to finally have the freedom and all of this. And I think it is so easy to then get kind of trapped into feeling like, okay, well, now I have the responsibilities. So you get to adulthood and it's like, I don't have freedom. And it's kind of that nuance of like, well, yes, you do. You have the responsibilities, but you also get to make choices. You do get to make choices, even if it doesn't always feel like you have the best options. You do
Mhm.
get to make the choices. And I think that's a really powerful thing for us to teach our kids, but really for us to embody for ourselves too, right? It's like the dual benefits of that.
Yeah. Also, one of the reasons why I think it's so important for moms to pursue their passions after they have kids is it protects you from resentment. We don't want to
Yeah.
resent our kids and we don't want to resent our life stage. But the reality is, if we just suppress the things that make us alive, we are going to resent things. No matter how like shiny and beautiful and
Hmm.
maybe how easy our kids are, and like it's just going to happen because I feel like I love emotions, and what I love about emotions is that they're like little signs that have a cord attached to them. And so you see the sign and you're like, okay, I see that. And then you can follow that cord back and back and back and back to some kind of thing that you believe about reality. So, like resentment, we don't have to fear resentment, but whenever we see that, we can just trace it back and be like, you know what really brings me life is having 30 minutes to myself in the morning. How can I arrange this so that that's actually possible? And maybe that's just setting up the tablets. And so whenever your kids wake up, they do that and you get 30 minutes to yourself. But whatever the thing is, the feeling itself isn't bad.
Yeah.
It's a sign, and we can become good at tracing it back to that core thing, and when we address the core thing, our lives get better. So this is why I love emotions. Sorry, that was more like a
Oh, I
tangent,
no,
but
I
I
love
love
it.
it.
I mean, I think it's so important. I do think it's really valuable to understand that the consequences of not doing things that actually feel aligned with what you want out of life are great. Those consequences are not just minimal, they are something that is worth looking at and saying, wow, feeling resentment continuously because I'm not being able to do the things that I want to do because I don't deem them as necessary. And so I'm not asking for the help. It's like, let's think about that for a second. How are you showing up differently than you want to be? How are you feeling differently about your life when your kids leave for college and you're home and don't feel like you have any sense of what brings you joy? How are you going to feel then? If we think about those consequences, okay, maybe the getting time to do what I want to do is actually a need worth addressing because it has these consequences. Not that it has to impact anyone else for it to be worth doing and, addressing, but it just is a good way to look at it, to reframe what is it that I actually need and when is it appropriate to ask for help. If you're feeling burned out, if you're feeling resentful, if you're feeling any number of things that kind of allow you to look at that thread to where it goes, and it's like, well, I'm not doing the things that bring me joy outside of raising my kids or outside of my job or whatever it is. If you're not doing those things, and you're feeling these feelings that you don't necessarily want to be feeling all of your life, right? Then, okay, maybe it's time to address this. Has there been anything with the act of actively pursuing a goal and pursuing a dream of yours? Like, has that changed motherhood for you?
Yes and no.
Okay.
On a day-to-day basis, very much.
Yeah.
And at the core, no. So I will say that I feel like we set some of these structures in place. Like it was really
Hmm.
important for us that like our kids can play by themselves. And, just things like that where it's like, yes, like to be clear, we do spend time with our children, but also like we wanted to have that in place. And now I'm definitely reaping the benefits where I have to tell my daughter, like, hey, I am working right now. And I will set a timer. She likes timers. I like timers. I will set a timer. When 40 minutes is over, we will do this thing. But until then, you have to entertain yourself. You can be in the yard, you can be in here. If you need help getting something down, I can do that for you. But other than that, I need to be working. So there's definitely that where it's like the whole family is going through like a different growing, I don't know, things look
Yeah.
different. And also, like we had to just do some redistribution as far as like household stuff. Like with my husband, like he does laundry now. And if that's not on my plate, that means I can be doing these other things. So there's definitely been lots of, I don't know, I would say like fluidity. Like there's lots
Uh-huh.
of like check ins between me and my husband being like, okay, what does your day look like? What does your week look like? How many meetings? Like that kind of thing. And then just sort of taking on whatever the other person can't. And then there are things where it's like generally like making sure that the family is fed and we just sort of switch off. Like whoever has availability will do it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's again the boundaries and the communication with the whole family dynamic and understanding that like that can take work to establish that, especially with our kids. Like
Oh my
if you
gosh,
set a
yeah.
timer, that's not going to just work the first time. I mean, maybe it'll work the first time, it probably won't work the second time. But then learning that this is how the boundary works and being able to be consistent with it, whatever it is, it doesn't have to be a timer for everybody, but whatever it
Mhm.
is, knowing that when we can set those systems up to give us the space to do the things that we need to do for ourselves, and however that happens, getting our kids on board, getting our spouse on board, it's important. And
Yeah.
and what is something that you don't need to pour the attention and energy. And you said like getting the kids fed, it just happens the way it happens. And that's how it is in our house too. It's like sometimes I'll make a delicious meal. Sometimes I'll call my husband when he's on his way home from work and say, can you pick something up? And sometimes we're like snacking on whatever, because honestly, my kids only eat what they're going to eat anyway. So like it's just how it is, right? And
Yeah.
for other families, that may be something that maybe more structure in that process works better, maybe more like intention in creating well-balanced meals every night works better, whatever it is. Maybe there's different things that you value, but knowing that like there's going to be the things that you're going to care about and put the time and attention into. And there's going to be the things that it's like, you know what, this works right now. And like, I don't need to do anything different just because it's not the way that I've seen that, we're supposed to do it or something like that, right?
Right.
So, for a lot of moms, actively pursuing things that they love, doing the things that they're passionate about, doing the things that maybe they thought they would be doing with their life, but aren't because they had kids and things got crazy and it just stopped. What do you see as the things that hold a lot of moms back? Because we know, yes, time, we don't have a lot of time, but that's not really the full story.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing is, Mama, you have permission to do something that's not a side hustle. Like it doesn't have to make money. Go forth and do something that doesn't make money. In fact, it might even take some money. That is okay. I feel like there's this side hustle kind of culture or that like this idea that whatever it is has to be like something fabulous or glamorous or that it's like postable at least. And the reality is like the stuff that fills us up might not be stuff that we're great at. And that's okay. Like the point isn't that you go forth and do something that's incredible. Like incredible things are happening with my book and I am so so grateful for that. I also love to sing. And you know what's not happening with that? Anything. I love singing and I have a pretty good voice. Would I love to be a like jazz singer for like weddings? Yes. Yes, I would. Am I going to pursue that right now? No, I'm doing other things. But I am doing something that brings me life. And I think we have also this idea that in order to be our full selves, that we have to like show up doing all of the things equally. And that's just not how life goes. It's okay to like change your hats. We're cyclical, seasonal creatures. And like, I don't see anyone like yelling at the earth for like having 4 different seasons. Like, it's not being true to itself. So, yeah, I think this idea of like show up and do what works in that season. Do
Mhm.
something, but do what works. Like during the pandemic, what worked for me and like what brought me joy was gardening. I was outside. It felt creative to me. It was a new endeavor. I love nature and like curating a beautiful space for me and my family to be in. And that was how I was like showing up to myself. And right now, how I'm showing up to myself is mostly, not entirely, but mostly writing. I think also we might have this illusion of like, it has to be the same as it was before.
Mhm.
Like how we go about the thing or what it looks like needs to be the same. That's just not how life works. Like we change and that's good. So you can pursue the same thing and it'll just look different by nature of the stage that you're in, and that's fine. So I think those things can hold people back. And then also I just think like underplaying the value.
Yeah.
I feel like that really like comes back to the core is just like not seeing it as a value. And I was chatting with my husband trying to figure out like how to say this in like the most clear, succinct way. So I hope this works. But I am using very specific language of like value versus priority
Mhm.
because priorities, they're like structured to dos. Like a priority is something that goes on the calendar or on a checklist. You either succeed or you fail at a priority. And a value is something much deeper and nuanced and complex. And so I encourage people to think about their passions, the things that are life giving to them, to not try to make it a priority. Because the reality is that you try to make it a priority and then your kid doesn't nap. Like,
Mhm.
like, what are you supposed to do with that? Then you feel bad. Then you feel like you're grumpy at your kid, you're grumpy at yourself. It's just no good. But if it's a value, it's something that you know that you're always going to come back to because it's important to you. And you're going to figure out how to structure your life in such a way that you can do the thing. But if it doesn't happen on that particular day, it's not like, oh, I've failed at my value
Yeah.
of doing whatever the thing is. So I hope that's helpful to
It
people. For
is.
me,
Yeah.
that has like really helped. I think just having like the space and grace and flexibility, like to pursue something that doesn't have to be, like I said, like on the calendar, on a to-do list. Yeah, I guess just thinking of things as like rhythms and you
Yeah.
just choose that that's something that you always come back to.
I think that's a really beautiful way of looking at it. I think of values, like the things that we value as being the things that inform our decisions. And so when you are thinking about doing the things that you love to do as being a value, you can better decide then how to structure your life, how to spend your time, how to involve the kids in something. I think that's a really useful mindset to have because we can't always squeeze another thing in. That's not necessarily the answer. I also just going back to the other things that can kind of hold people back, hold mothers back from pursuing these exciting things that may feel unnecessary or may feel like well, this is just totally random right now. There's a lot in there that I was thinking about with how just society teaches us how we're supposed to be in the world. So if you're not making money, it's not worth it. Well, that's like, no. But we are told so often that things have to be productive. And what does it mean to be productive? And if we're equating being productive with success and success with money, it's like you see how that can happen and where we get all these messages about that. And so breaking that down and saying, well, why am I doing this? There's actually other value there that is really beneficial to my life, even if it's not in a monetary way. And also with the idea of like how our interests may change. And again, it's like little kids. I mean, my sister's a great example of this. When she was little, she tried so many different things. Like she learned to unicycle, she learned to play the guitar, she played soccer, she did all the sports, like all, all the different things. And I think we really quickly, even for kids, say, okay, choose the thing. Now you're going to pursue that all through high school. We just kind of do that as a society. And that's not necessarily how we naturally are. And so if you have your thing and you're just pursuing it and you are like making things happen, amazing. But also, it's okay to say, I'm going to pick up photography because that sounds fun right now. And then to lose interest in a year and say, I don't really care about this anymore, right? Like it's okay if it ebbs and flows in different ways and you're constantly changing, constantly learning new things that you enjoy because you can't know all the things you enjoy. You can't know what's going to necessarily bring you the most joy if you've never done it before. And that is something that can be tricky when you feel like you're supposed to be, like you said, this version of yourself you were prior to becoming a mom. If you feel like doing the quote right thing is doing the thing that you thought you wanted to do before having kids and now you're trying to fit it in and make it work, it's like that's going to cause friction a lot of the time because it's not necessarily what actually is going to bring you the joy. So I think that's a really beautiful way to kind of reframe some of those things and understand that like there's room to play, there's room to experiment with what brings you joy, and like there's no right answer and there's no sustaining right answer, right? It can change and that's perfectly fine.
Yes. Yes. I feel like we need to be freed from like the shackles of consistency.
Yeah.
Like this idea of like, oh, you started down this path, you better take it all the way until you're an expert and probably make money off of it too. We don't have to do that. Like we have freedom to just like do something and then not. Like as a coping method, I learned how to make brioche.
Oh,
And then
fun.
yeah. And then once I succeeded, I was like, "Isn't that neat? I'm all done.
Yeah.
I, like, might never make it again."
Yeah.
But it was just like it was a thing that I needed at the time. It fulfilled a certain part of me and helped me wait while I was waiting for trade reviews. Now I'm all done.
Like you
I
benefited
could
from it. There was value
yeah,
in that. And it doesn't have to be some wild thing where now you're going to open a bakery.
yeah, no. Or even make brioche for the next brunch, like, that's not happening.
Yeah, totally. And that's a perfect little example. So I'm huge on talking about self-care, really explicitly talking about how we as moms can take care of ourselves and just make that like the norm and not some extra thing. I would love to know how you take care of yourself and if you have any advice for moms to just make sure that they are caring for themselves regularly.
For myself, there's not a lot of, like, structured stuff, so I don't have, like, a self-care regimen. I think a lot of it is kinda like I mentioned earlier, like, being in touch with my feelings, so, like, checking in about, like, whether we're being driven by fear or joy, and for me, that's probably the biggest self-care tactic, is whenever I'm feeling worried or stressed, stopping and checking in about like, what am I afraid is going to happen if I don't do this thing or whatever. A lot of times fear has layers. And so it's not really good enough to just like be like, what am I afraid of? Like, there was a stage in the publishing process. You reach out to established authors and say basically like, pretty please, I can give you nothing, but would you like to spend your precious time and read my book and then say nice things about it so I can put it on the cover? That's called an endorsement or a blurb. So as a 9, very difficult. And so I was feeling very stressed about this and very concerned. And I started walking it back and I was like, okay, so why is this weighing so heavily on me?
Mhm.
And so I was like, well, I have this fear of Iron Rose not being successful. But then I kind of like kept going and was like, okay, why am I concerned about that? And I realized I was like, oh, I believe that if Iron Rose doesn't do well, then all the people in my life who have made sacrifices and invested in me and this story will be disappointed. Like, I will have wasted their investment in me. And that was something that I kind of held and was like, oh gosh, I don't know what to do with this. And so I told my husband, and he was like, all right, okay, I hear that. We're supporting you.
Mhm.
Like, it's not the book. I mean, the book is good, but like, we're doing this because we love you. And whether or not the book does well, it will be like time and effort and money well spent because we care about you. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a conclusion I couldn't have come to by myself. And so I had to like reframe it because I still had to reach out to people.
Mhm.
I had to reframe it and I was like, okay, I'm working hard and I want it to do well because I believe in the story and I want to honor that. And that shift, I'm still like outwardly, it looks exactly the same, but that shift is huge for me because then I was coming at it from like a place of excitement and joy and being
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm going to like honor this thing because it's good, as opposed to being like, I'm terrified that if this doesn't do well, that everyone in my life will abandon me. And so, like, for me, bringing it all the way around, like, that's the best self care tactic because when I am being run by fear, it just destroys me. And I'm an unpleasant person to be around because I'm all stressed and snapping and like I'm not enjoying life. And those aren't great vibes to like share a house with. So I'd say that. And, like, take a shower, drink a cup of coffee. That too.
I love it. I seriously love asking this question to guests because there's always just such unique answers that all contribute to showing up for yourself and really understanding like what you need and giving that to yourself. And I think that's such a great tip of just remembering we can look at what's contributing to how we're acting, what's driving us, right? And when you're intentional about doing that and you really dig in, sometimes you can get to a solution to what may seem like a problem easier, I guess. I don't know if easier is the right word, but you can get to the answer. You can get to the this is what I need to address instead of trying to put band-aids on things. That can be hugely powerful in whatever it is and such a form of self-care, such an act of kindness towards yourself to listen to what you have to say, right? What's actually going on and what a powerful answer.
I also love what you said about the Band-Aids. That's, like, so true, where it's like, yes, would it have helped if I took a nap? Probably, but
Mhm.
ultimately, it wouldn't have resolved what was, like, killing me on the inside.
Yeah, you still have to deal with it. Okay, so I want to just really quickly, as we're kind of, hitting the end of this conversation, ask you just to share with us a little bit about your creative endeavors and your pursuit of your passion of writing this book that is now going to be released very soon, and just kind of open the floor for you to share a little bit about that with us.
Okay. Well, I wrote a book. It's called Iron Rose, and it's a dark YA reimagining of Beauty and the Beast. And it's got the action and fast pace of Hunger Games and the magic of Uprooted. And I think people are going to love it.
I love that. So where can people find this amazing novel?
So if you type Iron Rose into Amazon or Barnes and Noble, you can pre-order the book, and also you can go to your local bookstore. And if you just tell them that you would like to pre-order Iron Rose by Abigail O'Brien, they will be able to do it. And then it's like a win-win-win, like local community, you get to feel good. Maybe you got a coffee for yourself as you went into the bookstore.
Love it.
Like, it's great.
Oh, I love it so much. And is there anywhere we can follow along with your journey as you, I don't know, hit the next step of this huge accomplishment as an author, as a writer?
I would be so happy if you join me. That would be great. I am a millennial, so I'm mostly on Instagram.
Same.
You so you can find me if you just type in Abigail O'Brien author. My website is www.authorabigailobryan.com, and there you can sign up for my newsletter. I always start my newsletters with telling you to take a moment and get a glass of water and reheat your coffee and get yourself a snack. So even if you don't read the rest of that, but you want that in your inbox every once in a while, that's there for you. So if you want to join, I would love to have you.
Thank you so much, Abigail, for being here today. I'm so excited that we got to have this conversation. And I just am so excited to see what's going on with your launch and to celebrate with you as that's happening. So thank you for sharing your story and your journey with us.
Oh, thank you. It's been so great to be here. I really appreciate it.
Yes. And thank you for tuning in. You are worthy, Mama.